Well, ain't this some shit? Before I get too far into it, though, welcome to another episode of Hoban's Heroes, an experimental audio project featured on YouTube. So the Timbers had one job: go to Houston and don't get beat. One job. I'll say it again: go to Houston, not get beat. What do? Let a random player get a frickin' hat trick. We didn't just lose in Houston. I don't need to say this, but we got our asses handed to us. Open scoring on a very stupid handball by Ridgewell. And for how terrible Steven Taylor allegedly is, our captain gifted the Dynamo with a PK to open scoring. How many times in recent memory, it feels like a lot, have we opened scoring against us on PKs? I remember a couple weeks back when Vitas gave up that soft foul on Roldan, and I remember watching the lead up to the penalty kick and thinking, I really think Gleason's going to stop this one. I don't know. There's just something about Dempsey, his wannabe Cristiano Ronaldo lead up is pathetic. I think Gleason's going to stop it. Didn't happen. And now I'm starting to lose hope in that part of Gleason's game. He's a great shot blocker in the run of play, but PK is not his strong suit. So it's just at this point, with the Timbers conceding PKs to open scoring in so many games, it's a mental thing after that. The game seems to be basically lost. Yeah, so it comes down, it's all about discipline in the box, especially in this league that we call home. You know, it's foul friendly. They love to call those PKs. It's dramatic. It makes for good TV, quote unquote. Then it's a handball. Come on. That's just unacceptable. And the whole run of play leading up to that opening goal, it was undisciplined as it was. You know, Powell's errant pass, which, yes, was bad, but I hate to say it. I really do. It pains me to say it. Especially given all that Jack Jewsbury has done and that it's his last season. I don't want him to see him make these mistakes. But Jewsbury was caught ball watching, unaware that right behind him, Boniek Garcia was right there, just waiting to pounce. And it didn't have to be a giveaway. And it's all about awareness in those situations. And then again, you know, that wasn't the end of it, though. So Gleason saves the first shot. All of our defenders get sucked into the 6-yard box. All of our back line. We're left with Colin Warner wide freaking open to take that shot, which absolutely wasn't going to go in. So absolutely did not need to be handled by Ridgie. And I've said it before, I'm blessed to coach youth soccer. It's youth soccer, though. It's not professional. So the things they're doing is leaps and bounds more progressive than anything I could possibly come up with and understand. But for me, when I see some of these glaring mistakes that are happening in our games, it gets frustrating for me. And every youth coach cringes when they see the breakdown that led to the PK in this Houston Dynamo match. Like I said, our whole back line sucked into the ball, including Jewsbury, and then up at the top of near the 50-yard line, there's Chara just moseying in, and these are all guys that I are indispensable in my opinion. I love them. I wouldn't want any other guys, but it's just a bummer. I'll try to save the dramatics, but admittedly, this loss feels worse than normal, on top of the fact that we absolutely needed it. This might turn into a bit of a tangent. Here's the thing. The Timbers, we do everything right, and seemingly. You know, we have the best owner in MLS with Merritt Paulson. We have seemingly a pretty good front office staff we have a fantastic coach. We won MLS Cup last year. We're doing everything right. And we are on the cusp of not making the playoffs. And here's a team in Houston who had a terrible start under Owen Coyle. They bring in Wade Barrett, and they've fared much better. Houston's record, though, was so bad that their current form is just pretty much masked by how they started the season. And I always find it funny how often coaches are left off the hook, Here's Owen Coyle, one of the many non-MLS experienced managers who's been a failure. But Houston, still comes out and says we mutually parted ways. Just call it what it is. Coyle was deservedly fired. And this is a problem in our society. Randomly this happened. One of my buddies at work were talking about how his kid just joined the Cub Scouts. And apparently the Cub Scout promise is to do your best. And we were joking that this is just asking for mediocrity, What can I say? Did my best. Did the best I could do. Well, a lot of times people's best isn't good enough. And when it's not good enough, you have to be held accountable. And granted, records speak for themselves. I don't know. It's like Houston goes for this exciting managerial hire. So Sir Alex Ferguson was from Scotland. Doesn't that mean that Owen Coyle is going to be great? I mean, come on. So in a matter of a mere week, seemingly a week, the Timbers give up a 6-point lead in the table for that 6th spot in the Western Conference. We're seeing the nightmare scenario unfold, which is, of course, Seattle leapfrogging us in the playoff hunt. And I love it just as much as the next Timbers fan, seeing the banner that says our cup versus their cup, and it's the MLS Cup and the Starbucks Cup, and it's funny. Seattle will never be able to take it away from us that we beat them to getting an MLS Cup. It's always ours. It's always our bragging rights, but it's still going to be a tough pill to swallow if these results stand. And I'm not willing to give up on the Timbers yet. This weekend's going to really say a lot. And here's the thing. It just came out recently. I just heard about it personally. It hasn't taken long before our good old friend Siegfried Schmid started running his mouth. Apparently, between shoveling food in his mouth, he quipped, "Does it mean Caleb Porter has been a successful coach because 1 year he won MLS Cup and in 3 he barely made the playoffs? Is MLS Cup the only thing that defines you as a coach?" Come on, Siegfried. You got fired by the Sounders. Sorry if you got a raw deal, but how shitty is it for this guy who's the old guard of MLS coaches who let the Sounders-Timbers rivalry make him into a bitter old man? Let's go back a couple years. In 2013, the Timbers sadly missed the Supporters' Shield by 2 points. And then we fell to Real Salt Lake in the conference finals, who went on to lose it to SKC. We followed that season by not making the playoffs in 2014. So a couple weeks back, it goes back to what I touched on with what Taylor Twellman pointed out, how in American sports, MLS as well, we reward mediocrity. The Timbers do pretty good in the playoffs. We almost won the Supporters' Shield. We should have gotten some sort of compensation for that. And this is all pipe dreams. I get it. Help us keep our players after a successful season. Same with winning MLS Cup. What do we get for winning MLS Cup? Bragging rights. Okay, that really doesn't help us much. It's fun. It's fun to rub it in Seattle's faces, but if we're not making the playoffs the following year, So instead, we have to sell players to stay under the cap. And a few months back, I was telling a coworker who doesn't really follow soccer, but he's a smart guy. He's more into golf, tennis, and sailing, so that kind of tells you kind of where he's at in his interests. But he made the most basic but kind of profound point: how it's ironic that here in our world, the more left-leaning, progressive, for lack of a better term, socialist countries have these no-holds-barred, basically capitalistic soccer economic structures. In Europe, it's basically, the best way to describe it, it's basically a nuclear arms race for the best talent. However, let's juxtapose that with what happens in America. The home of capitalism, you would think we would have that same mentality. Let's go for it, no holds barred. Let's let every team have a chance to make their own destiny. If they want to spend the money, if that ownership group wants to spend the money, they can do that. If another team wants to try to maximize profits and not sign the best talent, they can do that too. But no, in America, home of capitalism, we opt for socialism. We play it safe. We have salary caps, etc. And I hate to use the terms capitalist and socialism, but because it is the polarizing world that we live in. At the end of the discussion, those are the only words that really sum it up succinctly and properly. It is what it is. We have to play in these tight margins. We have to do what we can, and it's a wait-and-see game at this point. We have 3 regular season matches left. Sounders, of course, have a couple games in hand. We really need 9 points. It's as simple as that. And 2 of those games are on the road. But speaking of road form, so here we go. So the burden has been lifted. Maybe. I tweeted out a while back that we had to win in El Salvador. Someone came back at me and said we didn't need to. And this was before what happened in Saprissa. So I tweeted out after the Saprissa Dragon draw that the Timbers have to win on the road in El Salvador. Have to is very legalistic, if you will, because we didn't know what was going to happen in Costa Rica. Somebody who I follow, another fellow Timbers fan, responded and said, no, a draw in El Salvador makes matches versus Saprissa into a 2-legged cup tie. Unbeknownst to us, we were destined, apparently, to lose at Saprissa. And I didn't know we would, but hey, we're in the driver's seat with the win in El Salvador, and it did feel extra good, I think. So 2 things. It was so good seeing Nagby get that goal. So good. Can I say it again? So good. It's something we need to see more of, especially with the uncertainty at the number 9 position after this year. But, oh man. Stealing it in the 90th minute on a free kick. Can I say it again? So good. So good. It's fantastic. 99.9% of how good it was the fact that it was from Nagby. So Addy's goal was very reminiscent of a certain goal from a certain rising star, or so we thought at the beginning of the year, in Jack Barmby, who scored that very similar goal against the Revolution, which I tweeted out how stoked I was and mistakenly decided to use a pro New England Revolution hashtag on that tweet, and a Revolution troll made fun of me because Barmby clearly didn't mean to bounce it off the turf prior to the ball going into the back of the net. And let's just say it, The bounce shot, while rarely intentional, it is somewhat effective and admittedly not attractive, but if it goes in the back of the net, that's all that matters. Adi, he got that equalizer. So Adi kept us in the game with the equalizer on the bounce shot, no less. It's just he's always so calm and collected. It's hard. He gets the equalizer, he keeps us in the game, but at the very end of the match, he gets the yellow card. It's head scratching, if you will. And we have no idea what goes on in the guy's head. We don't know what goes on in other guys' heads. I remember as a kid feeling so frustrated when we did something wrong and our parents or our teachers would say, "You did this. You got that. You got the yellow card, if you will." And you're thinking in your head, "No, I didn't mean to do it. It was oversight." They're like, "No, you meant to do that." And I always thought, how do you know what I meant to do? You're not in my head. Get out of my head. You don't know anything. I wasn't in Adi's head. None of us were, and at this point, we can only wonder how we will fare with McInerney up front. Hey, we're at home. It's going to help us. And I'm going to be wrapping up here. I hope I'm not going too long on this one. I know there's mixed emotions about Adi. I do. I remember a couple weeks back, one of my favorite podcasts in Timbers lore is the Portland Timbros. I forget who it was. I know for a fact Roscoe was pro Adi, and I think Dan was as well, which I appreciated. But the guest on the show was very hard on Adi, and deservedly maybe, because this was right after Adi missed the flight up to Seattle. I will admit, is an awful thing to do for a teammate in a team scenario. You can't do that. This guy was very hard on Adi, very hard on MLS. Here's the thing. MLS is a rising league. It's getting better. I remember turning on MLS games 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and thinking okay, I'm going to get into this. And then there would just be an atrocious error and just thinking, no, I can't do this. I can't watch this. I can't support this. It's not like that anymore. It's gotten a lot better, and Adi is proof of that for sure. And the Timbers are proof of that. But here's the deal. Adi has killed it this season. He's held up his end of the deal, in my opinion. We paid down his DP salary to bring in Milano last year. And look how Milano has performed. I hate to make other sports references. I did last week, and I semi-regretted it. But this is a little later into the show, so I feel like I can do it a little bit easier. Adi is to the Timbers as Shaquille O'Neal was to the Orlando Magic. I just watched this Magic moment on Netflix the other day. I remember back in the 90s following that Orlando Magic team and being pretty into it. I wouldn't say I was a fan, but as a kid, I was excited about watching O'Neal and Hardaway. Those guys were exciting, but I didn't understand the background. I didn't understand why O'Neal left and went to the Lakers. And as a kid, I didn't like it. I thought that was a douche move on O'Neal's part. And I know it's a documentary and there's always two sides to every story. Got to get that out of the way. But Orlando's fans seemingly drove O'Neal out of town. Hearing Shaq's side of the story, he says he wished he would have stayed. These fans that are watching these games in Orlando at the time, they're adults. They're grown-ups. They know better. Shaq, 23, 24, just think about what you were like at that age. You think you know the world. You think you have everything figured out. You know best. I do give him a little bit of grace, and I give people like Shaq a lot of grace. I don't want to see that happen to Adi. And so, here's my plea. Dear Portland and Timbers Army members, don't do that with Adi. His stock, it's kind of low, so that helps us keep him. We just need to do what it takes to keep him. Let's get rid of Milano. I don't know how that works. Make Adi a DP and find a good support position for Adi to bolster the offense. I'm not a GM. I just know we have a prolific goal scorer. It's going to be hard to replace him. It is. There's no two ways about it. Adi is not easily replaceable. From somebody who, like I said, is not a GM. I'm a youth soccer coach. I know nothing about recruiting talent. All I know is track record. Milano, not a good indicator of how easy it is to recruit talent. And we have this prolific goal scorer. We got to keep him. That's all I got. So we'll see what happens with the Timbers playing Colorado. It's very easy to see, and no one would deny the Rapids are not an offensive-oriented team. And Dick's Sporting Goods Park isn't exactly a pressure cooker for away teams. So the way I see it, we can get a 1-0 win. I won't be surprised if we don't. I don't want to go out on a limb and say we will. But if we don't, it's probably going to be a repeat of 2014, and none of us want to see that, because essentially if we don't make it ahead of that red line, that's basically the equivalent of relegation. I don't know if that's me talking, or maybe it's the Scotch talking, but anyways, go Timbers. Let's get that win.
We played them in preseason. Who the hell takes a third game in a preseason like it's bull? We played them in the third game. Everybody played 3 quarters. The Bears are who we thought they were. And that's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook.
All right, so I just finished, just got home from watching the Timbers Rapids match. I will say, this episode was kind of fun to record until there is a realization that the Timbers weren't going to even pick up a point in Colorado. It's tough to watch a must-win game that's a stalemate for 45 minutes going into half. I'm not one to call it boring. It's just straight up stressful. And this game still is like an open wound. It's hard for me to really put it into words. I don't like to be super dramatic about sports. It is entertainment. The guy who's most invested in it feels it the most, and I'm talking about the people who actually own the team. And at first glance, my gut instinct is to call it unlucky. I know that's what Porter said post-game, but it seriously goes back to me using that Dennis Green sample. The Rapids have an amazing defense. They probably have the tightest back four in MLS. Soderberg is a freaking wall. Nothing gets past him, and if it does, Howard slops it up. The only thing that I like about Soderberg is that he's Swedish. It's the only thing. I have a weird fascination with Sweden. I'll admit it. Maybe we can sign him once the Rapids have to sell off some of their talent at the end of this year. And I know there was a few chances in this game. I'll talk about Grabavoy first. I know he keeps having these quote-unquote games of his life, but in the end, I feel as if Grabovoy's all-time performances come up scoring 0 goals. I know that's an exaggeration. It's how I'm feeling at the moment. So, in 35th, 36th minute, when Valeri probably could have put the game away, there was that slight chance where it was really unlucky that Jewsbury wasn't in a better spot to just knock in that rebound off the woodwork. And that's the thing. That's what soccer is both. Why soccer is both super exciting and both super frustrating. That it's a game of chances. It's all about who gets the best chances. And sometimes it's all about one chance. And this is unfortunately, we have to see it as the example. So, obviously we know this was a must-win game, but Colorado, just for lack of a better term, to use Dennis Green's line, they are who we thought they were. They make few mistakes. The fouls that they commit aren't in dangerous areas. And going back to the beginning of this stretch, we knew it'd be tough to get a win in Colorado. I thought it'd be tough. I thought, if anything, we could get a 1-0 result. But I really thought in the past 8 days, the result we really needed, the result that was clearly in our hands, that we could get the best chance out of, was the one in Houston. And we came up short in both. We came up less short here. I guess that maybe goes to show how good Houston might be. Playing at altitude in Colorado and only losing 1-0, whereas we lost 3-1 in Houston. And I know Colorado is not a prolifically offensive team. They're resolute at defense, though. We'll see what happens in the last 2 games. I guess we have to cling to what we can, barring a Seattle implosion and or SKC implosion. We might be looking at not being above the red line. And it is what it is, but hey, to quote one of the geniuses of soccer, Alex Ferguson, he said it best, and I absolutely hate Manchester United, by the way. Throwing it out there, but sometimes you have to embrace your enemies. If you can't support us when we lose, you can't support us when we win. And it's all about positioning ourselves for the future. And I think Merritt Paulson's a smart guy. I think he's going to look at teams like FC Dallas, and he's going to look at putting together a back four like what Colorado has this year. And I think it's in our grasp to make these types of general managerial decisions, and I look forward to it. There's not much else to say. It is what it is, but in the end, we just have to come together and just say, Rose City till I die.